because we know people who should be successful, but what? They're not successful. Why?
So that's his why buy. But what is he afraid of?
My personal style of education, but still entertain them, bring them along with stories, right?
All right. Victor Antonio here, joining you. Thought I'd jump right in. Thank you guys for jumping on board. Let me see who is in the house. All right, we got a few people joining us right now, so looking forward to this one. Going to hit some new topics here. I'll wait for some folks to jump on. Give me a big hi in the comments section. Let me know that you're out there. Again, I can see you, but let me know you're out there. Give me a what's up, what's happening, all that good stuff. Pouring some stuff here. All right. Super excited about this, man. As we continue, Sales After Dark, we're going to talk about upselling again. Again, I'm going through the book, making some notes, going through the content. And if you haven't gotten the book, why haven't you gotten the book? Kamala says, good morning. Let me add this to the broadcast. That's what I didn't do last time. Boom. There you are, man. Good morning to you. Good evening on this side. Inkle John, always great insights about the generation. Oh, do you like that? The generation gap was really an interesting topic, wasn't it? I thought that was, I didn't know, for example, every 22 years you had a different generation, and that any given time within an 80-year period, you have 4 generations, going at it, so to speak. My man, Twinkie, we are all listening. By the way, again, we'll see you soon in Phoenix, man. I'll give you some information as we get closer to the date. Jen Williams, good evening. Right back at you, Jen. Thank you. Marcos Sayan, good evening from LA. How are those gas prices? Marcos, get those gas prices down. Let me know how that's going over there. Rogelio Jacinto, hola, ¿cómo estás? Glad that you're joining. Carlos Grave from Mexico. What part of Mexico, Carlos? Let me know. There he is, Christo, my man. Upselling never sleeps. That's original, man. That's original. Calgary, Alberta in the house. Calgary. How's it going up there? I heard you guys are having some serious lockdowns, man. You guys are really going for it, right? I got some issues. By the way, our cases are increasing here, so we can't talk. So anyway, Arvin Garcia says, good evening, Victor. I am using that specific tactic of my digital marketing business. Which tactic is that? I need to know. Good morning from the Philippines. I was just on a call with the Philippines right before I jumped on this live cast, which is why I'm a little late. I went to the Philippines a few years ago. Great company I work with out there called Ayala Land Premier. Are you familiar with Ayala Land Premier? So looking forward to, again, doing, this time we're going to do a virtual one, so I won't be going out there. Ronil Chandra, did I get that right, Matt? Hello, right back at you. Carlos is from La Ciudad de Mexico. Beautiful place, man. If you've ever gone, if Mexico City, if you, most people just think, here in the U.S., because you're U.S.-centric. If you have not gone to Mexico City and really understand the history of Mexico, you are missing out. I had a gentleman basically take me to the museums and everything, really explain to me the history of Mexico. It is fascinating. I mean, it's a rich history, Carlos. I'm sure you would agree. It's cold here, and being safe and healthy, that's the way to do it. It's going to drop 20 degrees here tonight, Jen. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, it is really crazy. Rogelio says, Salinas, California, most impressive was the tablet and the message on it. That's crazy, right? 1000 BC Sumerian tablet. Hope you guys got to see the, I think I put the link in the last live stream of the speech that Robert Greene gave. The Law of Human Nature, which is his new book, which talks about that. So if you haven't checked out the video, he's a very slow, methodic speaker, but I think if you just kind of hang in there with him, the content is fantastic. And there he is. No stream would be complete without this guy. Brian Gator Morrell is back in the house. Brian, good to see you again. I missed you, man. Inkle John. Yes, we're familiar with Ayala Land. Hope you can come back here in person. I would love to go back there in person. And the other half of the dynamic duo. There's Brian, then there's this character right here by the name of Pete Primo. By the way, Pete has his own podcast. Great guest, great information. Check him out. And Jesus is here. Let's go, Victor. That's Gian, my man. Good morning from the Philippines. I was on the call with that guy and his team, man. So looking forward to the event. From Chicago, hola, Victor. Very cold. Bien frío. I get it. Brian with the big woohoo. Sao Paulo, Fernando Cesar Cardoso. Bienvenido, muito bom, all that good stuff. All right, so we jump into this. Again, I'm reviewing the book that I just released, that one right there, Mastering the Upsell. If you haven't gotten your copy, you should get your copy. So get your copy, and again, I filled the book in. Let me see if I got a little note here. There's the book, hold on a second. Well, here's the content of the book, and I just thought I'd put it on there. So today I'm going to cover the freemium and the premium and the multiple options part of the actual book. And so, like I said, I'm going to go through my whole book. That's what I'm going to spend all these live streams. I would love for you to get the book, not so much because I'm going to be rich off of it, which I'm not. It's like, I think it's like, here's the, I think we priced it relatively, inexpensive. So not that expensive. So if you haven't gotten your book, I think as I go through these, and if you have the book with you, it'd be great for you to go through it with me. All right. That said, here, let me kind of organize my stuff here. That said, let's get into this. I just want to cover this topic. So the topic I want to start out with is freemium. Now, most of you are familiar with the concept of freemium. That is a portmanteau. That means a combination of two words, free and premium, right? And I think this is my favorite example because we have something here in the U.S. called Costco. Costco is it's almost like a wholesale shopping market, right? A grocery store where you can buy things in big volume, which is why you get the great price discounts. But Costco I used in the book as an example because for those of you here in the U.S. who've been to Costco or Sam's Club, you can actually walk down the aisles and there's people who offer you samples, like free samples. And they give you a sample, and obviously they want you to taste it. And if you like it, you take it home and you buy it. And then you'll again, that's the trick, right? Give them a taste. If they like it, the law of reciprocity kicks in. Now, this is important. It's kind of something subtle here. If I give something for free and you like it, the law of reciprocity says, according to Cialdini in his book Influence, you feel the need to actually give something back. In this case, you'll buy what the person is offering. That's kind of what's going on psychologically when you get the free sample. But beyond this freemium approach here, I think it's interesting to note that I want you to ask yourself, is there anything free that you can give your customers to kind of hook them in? Is there anything free that you can use to kind of open the door and grab some business, right? At least open the relationship. Let me give you an example. So again, that's a combination of the triad. You'll like it. By the way, I'll go full screen here so you can see it. So it's like the puppy dog clause. You often hear about the puppy dog clause, right? Remember the puppy dog clause back in the 70s, for those of you who are old enough, who have gray hair. The puppy dog strategy was, if you went to a pet store, they said, you know what, take the puppy home for a day. And if you don't like the puppy, just bring it back the next day. But you know what happens, right? You fall in love with the puppy and you bring it back, right? You don't take it back, rather, you just buy it. And the psychology of that is the psychology of ownership, right? So remember, the rule of reciprocity is there. You feel like giving something back. But when somebody gives you something, this is important. Once you take ownership of something, you feel like this attachment to it. And that attachment, once you own it, it's hard to give up. We as human beings have a hard time giving up things. They did an interesting study where they sold coffee mugs, right? So I would approach you and I would try to sell you a mug, a coffee mug, right? And I said, hey, I'm selling it for $3. Do you want to buy it? And the majority of people bought it, right? $3. They then went back and they asked the people, hey, can you sell me your coffee cup? And what do you think they sold it for? On average, they sold it for like $5.50. In other words, even though the cup was only worth $3, once they owned it, they valued it more. My point is, once you give people access to information, content, or whatever product you have, and they start using it, there's this ownership piece that develops. So keep that in mind in the background. There's an ownership piece that's developing, but there's a more powerful strategy that's always being used out there against us. Let's move over to the different types of freemium. Let's get into some detail now. Now, there's limited features, which means you can offer a product, right? You can offer a product. Let me just remove this. By the way, I'm glad you love Atlanta. Thank you very much. Lots of opportunities. We're looking forward to moving there next year. Welcome. Come on down. Come on down. But anyway, back to freemium. Typically, you have limited features. So you can offer a product with limited features. That's one type of freemium. Then there's limited capacity. For example, if you use Dropbox, which I do, they give you limited capacity in terms of what you can store. Next, there's limited use license. Maybe you can only use one license, you can't use 3 licenses, and you'll need 3 if you have a small company. Limited use time. You ever have those that you can use something for 2 weeks and then it turns off unless you buy the product? That's another strategy of freemium. The other one is limited support. You can buy the basic product, but if you bought the big product, you would get the support. And again, the hope is that once you start using the product or service, that you'll want the big support product. And the last one is limited access. In other words, we've all seen those websites where you go to the website and once you sign up for the basic, right? Because there's typically what? Bronze, silver, gold, right? And if you sign up for the bronze, you get a couple of features, but maybe you still have the watermark on there, or you don't have access to all the videos or all the content or all the graphics, unless you upgrade. So that's limited access. Now, these are different strategies you can use under the freemium banner. Again, different strategies that you can deploy depending on your product or service. I want to highlight something that I mentioned earlier, which is Dropbox. Now, Dropbox, just like Facebook, have something in common. Now, with Dropbox, you can sign up for a basic, service membership, right? And they'll give you limited capacity. That's one of their strategies. Now, what happens is there's something called sunk cost. The sunk cost effect is this. This is really powerful. Every SaaS company uses this strategy. Facebook uses it, Instagram uses it, they all use this. The strategy is as follows. Let's say Facebook, for example. Let's say you have a Facebook account. If you haven't canceled your Facebook account, let me tell you why you haven't done it, because it's sunk cost. What happens is you got the product, Facebook, for free in this case, right? And by the way, remember the saying, if the product's free, you're the product. Remember that. If the product is free, you're the product. So basically Facebook makes their money by using your data and selling ads, right? Now, what's interesting about the sunk cost feature here is that when you begin to put information into Facebook, as I have done over the years, that sunk cost continues to grow. In other words, I've sunk my time and effort into Facebook. So I've put in all this information, which is why it's hard for me to give up my Facebook account, even though I rarely use it, right? So Dropbox is no different. I started using their basic, I think it was like $99 a year program, right? And I think it was only up to, I'm gonna say 500 gig. I don't remember the number. But you know what happens? You start storing files up there and all of a sudden you hit that limit. Limit, where's the capacity? Limit capacity, then you hit that limit. And then, well, what are you gonna do? You've just stored 500 gig up there, right? So what do? You can move everything, but now you got to download everything and move it over to another platform. So what typically happened? What happened to me? I went to the next level. Now I pay, $129 a year, whatever it may be. And the reason I didn't want to move everything over, they're banking on that. They're banking on you not wanting to download all the information you uploaded, download it again, and move it over. Facebook banks on the same thing. Instagram banks on the same thing. That's why it's hard to get rid of these accounts. So keep that in mind, that how can you, if you have a product or service, how can you use the sunk cost effect? Maybe you can't. Maybe the freemium is a good approach to just, again, give them limited features so they can kind of play with your product. That's one approach. Limited capacity, another approach. My question to you is, can you use freemium to do the upselling? Because remember, this is all about upselling. So I get you to buy something or try something for almost nothing or nothing. And then I try to upsell you on something once you begin to use the product. So in the chat, hit me up. How are you using freemium in your system, in your deal? For example, one of the systems we use, we have 2 separate systems. One of the systems we use is with a company called Lightspeed VT. We use that for large corporate accounts, and we charge a lot of money on the Sales Velocity Academy. So there's a Sales Velocity Academy, and then there's the really expensive Sales Velocity Academy on Lightspeed VT. The reason a lot of people want Lightspeed VT is because they like to collect all the usage data that Lightspeed VT collects on the actual platform. And so one of the reasons people stick to that, my stickiness on that platform is very high, is because of all the usage data. Managers can go in there and look at all the information. In other words, they can look at each salesperson's history in terms of what courses they viewed, what quizzes they took, and what was the outcome of those quizzes. And again, because of that data, my system has a higher stickiness than the Sales Velocity Academy, right? So two different platforms, two different systems. So something to consider. What can you offer that makes them stick? Because this is all about retention as well. But my point here is sometimes we just want to give them something for free, let them try it to buy it, and then we move up to the upsell. So let me know what you guys are using. If the product is free, you're the product. That's right. It's a great saying because, again, they're using your data and also they're using the ads to attract, advertisers to get you to buy certain products. So anyway, strategy number 1 in the upsell book, first strategy is freemium. How do you use freemium as part of your upselling strategy? And again, let's brainstorm some examples here. Let's say I'm a pool company, right? I just sold you a pool, right? I just sold you a $150,000 pool. What I can do is offer you maintenance for free for the first 3 months. Why not, right? In those 3 months, I can prove myself and build a relationship. And after 3 months, you get so used to my pool cleaning service that you'll want to continue to use me, right? Let's go to, for example, the HVAC industry, heating, air conditioning, same thing. I can offer you some type of free maintenance service for the first couple of months. And then after that, upsell you on an annual contract. So be creative. All these little things you can do to try to increase your sales. So that's strategy number 1 in the book. Strategy number 2, which I've talked about in the past on the Sales After Dark, and I wanted to include the book because I really think it is one of the most powerful strategies when it comes to upselling, and that is options. Strategy number 2 in the book, right? So let's talk about options. And I love this example. These were bread makers, right? They were offering 2 bread makers here. And what they wanted to do was, initially what happened was they were selling the $275 bread maker. Then they said, you know what, let's move up market and try to sell some $429 bread maker, right? And so Williams-Sonoma, again, decided, let's kind of add this to our portfolio. Option A is not selling well. Let's kind of go up market and let's sell a high-end product at $429. Makes sense, right? You're selling a low-end product. You seem to have saturated the market with these bread makers. Why not move up market and sell one at $429 and try to go after a different demographic? What do you think happened? What do you think happened when they introduced the $429? What do you think happened? Did they attract new buyers to buy the $429? I'm sure they did, but this is what happened. Option B was to go to the luxury market. And what wound up happening is that option A, their sales doubled. Now, wait a minute. Think about that for a second. Look at the logic of this. This is really interesting. And that's why I find this study fascinating, because they introduced a second higher level product to go after the luxury market. Totally different demographic, right? High net worth individuals, for example. So they went after that market, thinking they would bank the sales there. But what wound up happening is they wound up selling the cheaper one even more. Sales double. Why? It's just the way the brain works. The brain is like a risk mitigating machine. It just works that way. Here's what happens in the mind. Let's go through the psychology of what's going on in the brain. This is important. Pay attention. Okay? Let's look at what's happening in the brain. When there's one option, it's $275, I have no reference point to compare it with. Just no reference point to compare. Like, is this too expensive? I don't know. I've never bought one of these. I don't know. Is this too expensive? So the consumer's mindset is this too expensive? I don't know. And because I don't know, the fear of regret, or remorse rather, regret kicks in, and that is, I'd rather not make a decision than make a decision and be wrong. I'd rather not make a decision and not be wrong than make a decision and be wrong. That's buyer's regret, right? By the way, big difference from buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse is when, like, somebody pressures you into buying something, and then you're like, oh, and you realize I shouldn't have bought it. That's remorse. Regret is, you know what, I'd rather not buy it because I don't want to regret it. And so they don't buy because they're going, I don't know if it's too expensive. By introducing an expensive option, look how the psychology changes. Is spending $154 more worth the extra features? No, I'll just go with the cheap one. Now notice that the $429 is now a reference point, a relative reference point compared to $275. So the psychology, just by introducing a second option, you change the question that the customer is asking in their head. I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating. Now, this is called the compromise effect. When you don't really know, you just look at two options, you say, you know what, let me mitigate my risk and go with the cheaper one. And so when we talk about the brain is a risk mitigating machine. And that is, when it doesn't know, it'll choose the cheapest option because it wants to mitigate risk, right? Now, let me give you a simple example of why this is powerful. I show this to people and they go, that's interesting, Victor. No, it's more than interesting. This is like the ultimate upsell strategy. So let me just walk through a simple example of selling chairs, for example, right? And let's say I have chair one, right? Let me go full screen on this thing. Chair one, $200. And let's say I sold 1,000. Let's say these are just fictitious numbers I'm making up, right? Chair number two, at $275, I sold 500. Not surprising. We know that the cheapest one is going to sell more, right? So let's say these are my numbers, and my total revenue is $337,000, right? And so I'm like, great. But now what happens when I add a third chair? Now, if I add a third chair, let's say chair number one, let me put all three up here. So now let's say I have three chairs. I had a $200 chair now, but now I added, I want to highlight this. I started out with a $200 and $275. But now look at the distribution. Now we got more people buying down here as well. So now we got a $475 and we sold only 50. Now again, the total units sold is still the same as my previous example. But notice what happens. People will buy the cheap one. Few will probably buy the high-end one, but most people will migrate to the middle. Why? As I've pointed out in the past, when we have three options, we'll go, it's like the Goldilocks effect, right? Too hot, too cold, just right. And again, the brain is mitigating risk by going towards the middle. So it'll just go to the middle. So by adding a third option, you shifted people from buying the 200 to moving into this spot right here, just by adding this third option. What's fascinating, if you run the numbers, let me go full screen so you can see it. If you run the numbers, now you've actually sold more. You've increased your sales by 9.6%. And I like to use what I call the 20-60-20 rule when I look at this. 20% of the people will always buy the cheapest product. 20% of the people will always buy the most expensive product because they're just high status buyers, right? High net worth individuals who want status products. The majority will always move towards the middle when you offer three options. Now, this right here is called, in many cases, the movable middle. Because what we're trying to do is move these people here. Now, again, if we can close the deal right there in the middle, great. I can close 60% of the deals. But my job is to what? Move them up market. And I'm telling you right now, by offering three options, you move people up in terms of price points. And so I think that is all I wanted to cover. Anyway, get the book. This is my sell to you today. Just get the book because, again, we'll just keep going through these, all the different pieces in the book, the different content. Let me know what you think of this. And can you use these strategies? So I would summarize it as follows. What I would do is find a way to, one, can I use a freemium approach? Understanding the concept of sunk cost, can I use the freemium approach? Can I use the concept of ownership? Once they own it, they can't give it up. Can I use that, again, psychology to get people to try my product? And what can I do with the different, I showed you different ways you can use freemium. What strategy would you use? Limited use, limited capacity, limited license, whatever it may be, figure out your strategy. Number two, remember, if you offer two options, they'll choose the cheapest one. If you offer three, they'll pick the one in the middle. And if you think about it, it'll shift your price point. One final note. I had somebody ask me one time, I said, Victor, what if I only have two options? To which I answered, invent a third one, a more expensive one, and the majority of people will buy the one in the middle. That's the target one that you want people to buy. On that note, I'll take questions if you have anything. Let me see what you guys got here. Alexandra Rose, I'll start from the bottom here, says, using the options with my services, way to go. That's how you do it. Chad, my man, Schaefer, thank you for the knowledge. Thank you for hanging out with me. Victor, you're right on time. Thanks. Shalene, thank you again for being here. Pablo says, hey, Victor, how do you use reciprocity when you haven't necessarily done anything for the prospect or the customer? How do you generate reciprocity? Well, you have to do something in order to work, or else it just doesn't work. It isn't reciprocity. By done anything, and you put that in quotes, that's what I like. I like the way you put that in quotes. If you haven't done anything, are you sure you haven't done anything? It's like when you say good morning to somebody. The rule of reciprocity kicks in right there, because if I say good morning to you, you feel this need to want to respond, say good morning. So when you haven't done anything, can you give them something? You know, I don't know what the context is, Pablo, so I'm having a hard time with that. If you could add some stuff, I'd be open to listening to it. Jim Duffy says, brilliant. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you being here. I know I missed a couple of comments. I'm going to go back to the top here a little bit. Let me see. So, okay, so I'll start here. I think I missed a few people. Ola, Rosa says, hola, from Ohio. Always great. By the way, we'll be in Ohio in June, doing an event there. Looking forward to that. Love your education, love your knowledge. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. Chad back with, again, right there. Samples is a very good way of, you know, doing a freemium deal on them. So I love that. Tony's in from Chowchilla, California. That's cool. Gerald Buckley says, my freemium offering results in follow-up consulting and MRR. And again, I think you could use it, right? It's very tactful. And again, there's always got to be something that we can, there's got to be always something we can do. All right, Inkle John says, thanks for the great insights. Always, man. Question, I offer free MS Excel template for timekeeping, and I sell the full version. Should I be charging for every customization or modification they're asking for? Yes, I would. But again, I would highlight, so if you're selling this Microsoft Excel template for timekeeping and you sell the full version, right? Should I be changing? Yeah, charging for every customization or modification they're asking. What I would try to do is figure out, you know, what are they actually doing? I guess I would actually try to figure out what can I offer them, and then I would charge per hour. So for example, if somebody says, hey, can you make these changes? Because I used to be in software development. People are like, can you do this? Can you change that? And believe it or not, if I thought it was a good modification, I would give it to them for free, because what I would do is, it's almost like, thank you for the idea. Let me upgrade my software product to include that new modification. But if it's something that takes you way off track, that requires a different type of modification, a lot of effort, then charge for it. I think if you tell people that your hourly rate is X and it'll take 1 to 2 hours to do that, do you still want it? That's always a good close for me, right? So when people say, Victor, can you modify this? I said, yeah, it'll take us about 40, 50 man hours to do that. I estimate the budget will be here. Does that fit with you? And that would tell me if they really want it. When you ask people to kind of pony up for the modification, that tells you how bad they really want it. So something to consider. Something to consider. Regarding Dropbox, Chris Stone says, Dropbox, you still need to have a valuable service. Getting freemium customers is great. But you always have to provide a solid platform if premium customers are going to invest. I agree. Hoot, Cesar Castro, man, good to hear. Dude, you got to give me an update on how everything's going on your side. So anyway, I'm going to scroll down. I know I missed a few here, and I really apologize if I missed yours. Camlish, well, here, sorry, I missed this one by. Thank you, Mr. Victor. Very nice and useful information and training imparted. Thanks again. Thank you for being here. Jim Duffy, hey, you're a Chicago guy. I'm a Chicago guy. Yeah, I left the cold, Jim. Chris Stone says, how does the value ratio work with the 20-60-20 approach? Can't give away too many options, value for 1 and 2, if you want to get the 3 and overall revenue. So I guess the way I use the 20-60-20 is that when I present 3 options, Chris, on average, 20% of the people will buy the low end, 60% will buy the middle, and another 20% will buy the high end. So he says, can't give away too many options and value for 1 and 2 if you want to get the 3. That's correct. So it's interesting because how you price, I mean, it's a great question you're asking, Chris, because it's when you look at pricing. I'm going to put pricing here at 100, 200, and 300, right? And what's interesting is that if I look at a distribution like that, kind of assuming that, the features grow gradually, the majority of people will migrate to the middle. But what's also going to happen, and we'll talk about this in the next Sales After Dark, is how do I shift? How do I move you this way? Remember I talked about the movable middle? How do I move you that way, right? Even, like I said, there's ways of moving people this way depending on how you actually do the pricing. So I'm going to leave this as a teaser for the next one, because on the next one I talk about decoy pricing. And decoy pricing shows you how to shift a buyer's attention when they're looking at pricing. It is a really cool strategy, because I'll put it this way. You will never send out a proposal the same way as you're sending it out today. You'll actually look at the numbers and try to understand what it is you're trying to do. I can either shift you down or I can shift you up, depending on how I play with these numbers. So in your case, Chris, if there's not a lot of wiggle room here, but this one's too big, we might scare people. But how do we get people to consider the third option and move away from the cheaper option? I'm going to show you that when we do the decoy pricing on the next Sales After Dark. So, sorry, Chris, you're going to have to wait for that one, man. Camla says, we give free analysis report for water testing. Based on that, we upsell. Love it. Love it. Doug Martin says, this is great, but I missed most of it. Will this be available for review later? If you go on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitch, and it's somewhere else, you should be able to find it. And on that note, I think I'm out of here, folks. Have a great evening. We'll see you next time. Take care. See ya.